We will deal with it.
Are you just gonna sit there and take it that last caller just made me drive off? Every day.
Drive Time UGC.
Let's not start that mental breakdown.
It's an experiment.
Well, with the Foundry, we can probably agree on what the biggest bugs are right now.
Information or instruction. This concept of emergency broadcast is
Hello and welcome to Drive Time UGC. I'm Cerberusfilms, and joining me tonight are, sitting over there, pulling all the levers and doing everything technical, is Captain PF Dennis.
Good evening.
And over there, looking rather dapper in his green sweater, is Kirk Fat.
Hello, everybody.
And we will have Cosmodian with us, but he's kind of in traffic, so you know. Also, apparently thunderstrikes going on next to him, so we'll see. We may have him a slightly singed Cosmodian later on. But anyway, I suppose welcome to episode 5, guys. It's good to be back, and thank you for joining us live. If you're joining us live, or for watching on YouTube, or through the many other options which someday will come up, I don't know. Brain, alcohol, yay. So we're going to be playing an interview that we had with the lead. What is he? Foundry lead producer. I forget. I forgot what he said in his
Lead producer for the Foundry.
Yeah, lead producer for the Foundry, Rob Overmeyer. He's currently in charge of. He's overall in charge of Foundry, but he's currently focusing on Neverwinter. So we had a nice long chat with him. And today we're going to play the first half of that chat, and then we're going to spend the rest of the show talking about what he said, etc., etc., and then, of course, finish up with our usual bag of tricks or something. Does that sound good, guys? I assume you can hear us.
Good.
Cool, then. Shall we play?
Yes, and I will just click it, and we'll be into our interview.
It's here somewhere. Hello and welcome to our interview with Rob Overmeyer. Hello.
Hello.
Anyway, would you like to give us your full title, etc.?
Yeah, an executive producer at Cryptic Studios. I am currently the producer of The Foundry and Gateway for Neverwinter.
Cool. I guess we'd better start off with our questions. I think probably the biggest thing to start off with is the Foundry in Neverwinter is currently down.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening there? What's going on? We've had some experience with that sort of thing in the past with Star Trek Online, but we're wondering what's changed, what's happening to it in Neverwinter. We have ideas, but just fill this in for our audience.
Yeah, so we ran into a couple snags when Period of the Feywild went live, and one of the things that sort of caused us pause and sort of had us freak out was thought that we had run into, or we were seeing an issue with a data loss. So we sort of reacted very quickly and turned off editing and reviewing and basically everything. Because we had, back in the Star Trek days, I'm sure you remember, there was
Season 4.
Yeah, there were some data
Yes.
loss issues. And after that, well, we learned a lot from that issue. But we basically have a law on the Foundry team, which is we will do everything in our power to make sure that we don't ever have to deal with that again. So to that end, we saw, well, basically what happens is if there is an issue with data loss, any project that gets edited during that time basically creates a near unrecoverable state for that project. So so we don't, I mean, there's tons of work that we could do, and we could, go, through backups and stuff and find previous versions. But it's all really messy, and it's actually, I think, it's a worse experience than having the Foundry down. So I made the call for that to make sure that we investigated thoroughly any issues that we thought had to do with data loss, and editing wasn't going to be back on until we were sure that we weren't seeing anything with any issues with data loss. So we found that there wasn't, but due to the volume of quests in Neverwinter and the republish process that we were going through due to the changes that we made to the Foundry for Fury of the Feywild, there were a number of issues with failing publishing, and then there were slowdowns, and then the publishing wasn't going as fast as we wanted it to. There was also another issue where there was some data changes that were affecting quests, so basically we were just reacting, just being very proactive to try to protect the integrity of the author's content. And that was sort of fast and furious, and we tried to have as much messaging and communication as possible. I was on the forums, chatting with the authors and stuff. But we were basically just sort of fast and furious to make sure that, if there's any issues that we caused because of some data change, there was a map that got rather fuzzy with Fury of the Feywild that was not on purpose. And we didn't want anybody to get poor reviews based on things that happened because of something. Teleporters also was an issue. So we worked on getting those things fixed right away, and then we pushed a build-out that addressed those things. And then basically what we have to do now is we're going to go through and test the republish process. We have something called the UGC Master, just sort of a controller for all of the UGC stuff. We're going to update that so that it can better handle the load of republish. Once we're good there, we're going to turn editing back on. I have very good confidence that we can do that today.
I don't suppose that has anything to do with the that maintenance that was happening. At least I'm not quite sure whether it happened in Neverwinter Foundry as well. Actually, it wouldn't, because Neverwinter Foundry's down. But Star Trek Online Foundry was taken down for 20 minutes or so.
Absolutely.
About an hour ago. Is that related?
Yep,
right.
That is UGC Master getting updated.
Okay. Actually, if I may just quickly go on then, would that update be affecting Star Trek Online as well? As in, I don't know if you're aware of since you're more Neverwinter at the moment, whether you're aware of the large load time issues that Neverwinter did have back in beta, I believe it was, that Star Trek Online's currently having. Don't suppose that will affect that in any way?
They're different process. I mean, they're different machines and everything like that. But in the end, everything does come through the patcher. I mean, we do have a single sort of mind, if you will, that sort of handles patching. But no, I don't think, to my knowledge, and part of my investigation after all of the server backend stuff is taken care of today, is to go through and see sort of how widespread the issues that we were having were. I do focus a lot on Foundry for Neverwinter, but the Foundry team is sort of one big sort of group and family, and we also work on Star Trek as well.
Okay, so probably the next thing would be the profanity issues we were having last week. Just can you tell us exactly why those issues occurred in the first place?
I'm sorry, what issues?
The issues we had with the profanity filter in Neverwinter last week?
Oh, yeah, so that was actually completely unrelated to the Foundry. The profanity filter was updated, and it had some interesting consequences, and then we rolled that back out. I believe the goal was to be a little bit more proactive and aggressive in the profanity filter for some combinations that I think were not added to the profanity filter due to content that was being created or stuff the authors were doing. It could have also been to handle things that possibly from different regions, and then there was just sort of an unforeseen consequence for being more aggressive than maybe we needed to be. So it was sort of interesting. It was something that kind of happened, and I hadn't expected it to impact. I think nobody expected it to impact the Foundry at all. It was sort of like, I mean, to be honest, it was like, we're going to add some phrases and some words to the profanity list, and basically the system sort of ran with it and took for instance, this is an example, this isn't exactly what happened, but took an exclamation mark and did something with it, like put two words and strung them together because there was, some errant punctuation. Mm-hmm. So it was unintended, and it was a very strange thing that happened, and it's sort of getting reports of it. Like, I was looking at the forums and was like, wait, I didn't say anything bad, and my quests aren't profane at all, and I think I saw it in the evening, and then, I sent some emails about it, and it took to roughly, 9 a.m. the next morning or something, sort of figure out what was going on. And then, we got to back rev everything out and get into a build and get it tested and everything, so we got it turned around as fast as possible. But, yeah, that was a strange thing that happened there.
Mm. Child and John and random thing. Jungle, yes.
If you use your imagination, you can probably think of why we would add certain words to the filter. Yeah.
We've come across things like 312 is profane, just typing in the numbers 312. Urban Dictionary,
Yes.
for some reason, says it's something that you would never imagine before. Just a random string of numbers, yeah.
So you can imagine, like, there are people that are very diligent and care a lot about the modern slang colloquialisms or things that that may be bad in some areas and not in others. We also have different languages and regions and things, and there's obviously phrases and terms, and I'm sure that you're aware of that mean something that's completely different than what I would imagine they'd ever mean.
I suppose then, what's next for the Foundry in Neverwinter? I mean, we've seen this fantastic 3D editor arrive, which is, I must say, it is intriguing. I've spent a fair while in it now, and there are a lot of idiosyncrasies with it that I'm not used to, because I was expecting more of, coming from a sort of a 3D editing background in animation and things like that, I was expecting slightly more, but it's fascinating, and it would certainly make a hell of a lot of things a lot faster to do. But what's next now? We've heard things like about cutscene tools for a couple of years, things like that, but what is your vision, or the team's vision, or both?
Actually, right now we are definitely sort of knee-deep in discussion about what is next. I think there was a lot that we've learned from this latest update to the Foundry, and part of me, the team and I sat down and we had discussions about what we're going to do next, and we have, a schedule that we're building out, and we're already working on those things. But the latest development sort of had given me a little bit of reason to pause and wonder about what we could do to make the experience a little bit better. So we're talking about making one of the most important things that are going to benefit the authors and the community the most. So some of those things, and sort of give you an idea of not only what we're thinking about, but why we are thinking about those things. So the publish process, that seems a little bit heavy right now. There's also, and the cool thing is that, if I might add just real quick, is that the things that we're thinking about aren't necessarily in a vacuum. We've definitely seen sort of our own sentiments echoed in the forums just as I go through. So things like, it was mentioned that, hey, there's all of these quests that were added maybe in the first month that are just sort of sitting around, and are we publishing those, and can we just get those out, because there's so much stuff that, in there, maybe, stuff that hasn't been played in 2 months, or authors that have published things and those things haven't, they haven't come back to them for a really long time or logged in anymore. So we're going to, well, that's a very good question. We sort of talked about it internally as well. So coming up with sort of, I'll use an incorrect term, but it'll just get the idea across, an offlining solution to old projects that are good. They can still be searched, but they're not part of the active search. So maybe that makes search faster and better. And then as far as publishing goes, when we do a wholesale republish, maybe those older quests don't get published first, and that would lighten the load, or we stage it out in a way. We already do have a sort of a rolling publish that we have. But anyways, how we can make that process of when we push something out that's really big, sort of lighter, if you will, not take so much time, and then definitely not have a huge impact in authors' abilities to hop in and do any editing, to check out all the new tools, because that sort of was, I bet, it was frustrating for me. I got into, my quest, and I started doing my editing, and then, saving was a little bit slow, or there was these things happening where there are definitely assets that I had used in my quest had changed, and that was a bit weird. So that basically going through my experiences to the stuff that I'm working on, and then looking at all of the things that the authors were saying that had changed, that was different or damaging, made me wonder if, maybe that's something that we should look at first before we start looking at more features. The Foundry is pretty feature rich as it is.
Yes.
But there's some usability things, like you talked about the idiosyncrasies of the controls of the 3D editor. We could definitely streamline that. And there's some strangenesses in messages and people understanding what exactly is missing as far as, when you have a task and it says, missing component. We could do much better and say exactly what you're missing, instead of just saying missing component, and you click on a thing and you're like, I don't know what it's supposed to mean. So the other thing that came out of it was, things that we can do to make it easier to find the new stuff. So adding in sort of a new category. So whenever we add things that are new, they're easy to find. You can check them out. And then for us internally, sort of, and this goes to sort of that law that we have about protecting authors' content all the time, or as much as possible. We're absolutely human and absolutely not lazy. I'll be clear about that. Definitely this week we're investigating what we can do to really understand exactly everything that changes in our assets. we have a lot of assets in Foundry that are referenced, and we don't duplicate everything. It creates this enormous library, so that's not really tenable or reasonable. But there were a number of things that changed, and I think what happened was, like, there was a collision on one of the ruined pirate ships.
Yeah,
Changed.
I read about that.
So what happened was we had a big push to do some optimizations, and one of the myriad ways that you could optimize large geo is to create new collision that basically, so that it doesn't try to draw every single thing. So in doing that, it broke the asset and it broke quests, and it was obviously the task was started and executed from a good place, right? We wanted to make it less expensive and bring the frame rate down and our budgets down. Increase the frame rate, bring our budgets in line for what we can do for performance. But it had this impact. We have a huge list of things that we want to add, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But what this latest push really had us do is sit down, go through a post-mortem of everything that happened and how we can make that better and not happen in the future. And so the things we looked at were making manual repub lighter. In fact, maybe not do manual repub. Maybe leave it to the authors for the first couple of days, because anybody who's active and playing will probably want to get their stuff out published first. So maybe that's what we do. So it's a process change. And then what does that mean for us? And we got to make sure we can support that. So investigate that. Make sure that we always know what has changed, or do a better job at figuring out what has changed. And that's some editor work on the back end where, it's not fun and incredible new things for the Foundry, but it's definitely a back end that I think everybody would appreciate.
Oh yeah. Making things better on the back end is really helpful to everyone.
Yes.
It means everything's simpler going forward.
And then improvements to the editor make it easier to use. And we got one of the devs who I've every single time I open up the floor, so, all right, guys, what are we going to do? He says, I'm going to go through and I have to optimize all of the UI and I'm going to make it faster. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. Optimization is like, it is an oubliette. You could just be down there forever.
Yeah.
So we sort of, hunt around for things like, okay, well, let's go around. Let's make this part cheaper. Okay, we'll optimize that experience. It's like, no, it has to be wholesale. It's like, okay, that means that we don't get anything new for the Foundry for the next 8 months. Okay, well, maybe we won't do that.
So it's really trying to assess if we do this, will the players try and kill us? Sort of
Absolutely.
thing. Yeah, okay.
So as far as...
And then whose responsibility is it? For who do we say we're going to kill now?
I will always defer. It's not me. I didn't. No, all of the authors and everything can always yell at me. I mean, the team does a fantastic job, and we work we work tirelessly to get as much as possible out to the authors. But I'll definitely take the brunt and the blows. So as far as
I'm sure most of them aren't deserved for you, but yeah. Just to say now, it is a fantastic job that you've all done, and especially with the 3D edit, it's fantastic to see. All the new features, everything, it's awesome.
Yeah, and we're definitely very excited to keep it up and keep adding more. And to that effect, we've talked about some of the things in the short term where we look at the top requests, which don't really change much, but it was oddly enough this time around post Fury of the Feywild, there was a change. We've got boss fights, that is the number one request. And timers, that was a new one this time around. Timers was on a request. It's odd, but people want things to happen at times. One of the biggest and scariest things that was just sort of mentioned in passing, which was just sort of terrifying, was one of the authors requested what was effectively the director from Left 4 Dead. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's such a monumental task. I don't know. He's like, and our quests, and they should get simpler based on the number of times people die and the things that they bring. And, wow, the director of Left 4 Dead, I don't know if you guys recall it, was like a core feature for the game. And probably not something we could just write.
give it to an intern.
Sure.
Their summer project.
So anyways, we're looking at the lists, and there's plenty of lists out there, people's top 10 requests and everything, but the things that we've sort of, heard a lot about from the community is definitely the making bosses, and that's internally we call that team content. And I think I've mentioned this before in different sort of interviews and streams and stuff. There is a request for, hey, just give us the ability to put more hit points on a guy and scale him. And that might be a good way to start, like in an alpha, but bosses, I think, mean a lot more than that. And I think one of the things that we have to really understand on the dev side and on the author side and the community side is that is that it is going to be a group effort to really build and deliver something that is considered to be bosses. Internally, what we think that is team content, so not solos, it's 5-man. What that means for an author is if you're going to make and put a boss in your content, that means only teams can play it. I'll be very honest, open, and clear. I am terrified of people having singleton bosses for singleton players and the exploits that will happen from that.
Oh god, yes.
Yeah.
So it would. There are being able to put a tough guy or tough thing in a map and have it need 5 people to defeat. That's not hard. It's all of the other things and what it means for that, what rewards mean for that. And so when I say bosses really means team content, it's what does team content mean in Neverwinter?
And also what does it mean in the Foundry in Neverwinter as well, I suppose, yeah.
And how can we protect the game, the community, and our authors from pits of ogres being dropped into lava and stuff? Because I think there's an integrity that I really want to maintain. There is some terrific, absolutely fantastic content, quests that have given me the best experiences I've ever had in Neverwinter, boss fights that rival the boss fights I've had in the core content, and this is all done without bosses. So I know that there is absolutely amazing content that will be made and can be made by the authors, but at the same time, there's a lot of really shady content that
we all know there have been a lot of exploits over the years, and people will always find a way if they can to game the system, unfortunately.
So we definitely want to protect against that, and it's not just us, but of course we need to protect obviously Neverwinter, but protect the reputation, right? The author's reputation, user or author created content's reputation. So we definitely want to put in checks and balances there, and also what rewards mean. So when there is a team content, I think there's an expectation of better than not yours green dropping from the chest. That's definitely something that we got to work out. So team-based content is something that we are very excited about. We're talking about that. We're building towards that. Before I keep going, to say that these are none of what I'm saying about things that we are interested in is solid, planned, scheduled. Right?
It's all subject to change.
Yes, everything. It's like what I'm saying is just a dream. But what I do want to impress to you guys is that it's things that we're very passionate about, think a lot about, and we're planning towards. It may make a lot of people happy that the subject and topic of PvP maps comes up, and then it sort of dies down a little bit, and then it comes up again, and it's not driven by players. It is driven from internal desires. So that's pretty cool. Before it was sort of just one man's dream, and then it was a couple people's dreams, and then it was the community saying we'd love to make some PvP maps. In talking about PvP and Foundry, I think that all of the authors could probably rally behind the idea that making a map and having multiple people spawn on them or teams of people spawn on them, that's probably not very hard. The gameplay types is probably not very hard. I think we just sort of leave it open, right? If you want to make a PvP match where it's the first team to talk to a contact and there's no fighting whatsoever, that's fine.
But then creating teams and having to all organize, and I could see it could be a wonderful, fantastic thing. But from a player's side, I know that a lot of things appear as though they should be simple, but then quite often what the players think is simple is actually not simple to make at all.
Yeah.
Whilst vice versa is also true. What devs think is simple, the players may think is incredibly difficult.
I think the biggest challenge there is actually it's just the volume. The volume of PvP maps, and I sympathize very much with the authors that struggle to see their quest bubble up to the top to get coverage, to get plays. It's weirder, I think. It's different, I guess is a better way to say it, for a PvP map that somebody made. How to get that played, and talk about exploits, right? Can it even be rewarding at all when it's in an alpha stage? Or is there an alpha stage, and then does it get a lot of plays, and then people vote for it, and then we say, this is pretty cool, and then it turns into a real, official map. And so that is actually the hardest thing for us to sort of work out, and we struggle with, is how do we deal with the volume? Do we just let the community just determine what the best PvP content is? That's definitely a route to go, right? How is it currently working? So evaluate that. What is there a difference between stories and quests and PvP and maps? I would think there is, but that's a question we definitely have to ask and answer.
And then there's the time-old question that's like, difference between, I suppose, grinders and story, and how are you separating them? Which I suppose leads us on to, if we may jump in.
Is the rating system in Neverwinter weighted at all? And if it is, can you explain to us how it works, sort of?
And then also, perhaps along with that, the new tagging system and things.
The rating system is a fairly standard algorithm. So we use the lower bound Wilson score for our rating. Basically, what we've tried to do was we take our ratings and then we take in the average rating, and what we try to do is create a confidence of the rating. So there's definitely the hard rating, and then there's an adjusted rating based on the confidence of that content or that item actually being rated that way. So if something has 4 stars, we look at how many people have rated it 4 stars, and then we give it a real rating, or the adjusted rating, based on our confidence that that is actually what it is rated. So if you've got something that has 10 ratings and one of it is 4 stars, the rest of it's 2, we will give it'll have an adjusted rating, right, of, say, 2 stars, because we have more confidence because of the number of ratings that it is closer to 2. It might be 2.3 because obviously there's some wiggle back and forth, but the adjusted rating is based on our confidence of the rating based on the number of rates and the ratings of those.
Does that actually have any real advantage over just a straightforward averaging? I suppose it may do it fairly low numbers, but as soon as you start getting more than 10 or something like that, you'll probably be getting more or less the same results, wouldn't you?
Not exactly. It is harder for people to tank the rating if you use averages, right? So because we have confidence, or we try to build confidence in the rating, there's also a time component, right? We could say that this was rated, and all of a sudden a bunch of people came in and rated it a 1. Well, that necessarily won't tank the rating.
Oh, right. I see. So it's right. Okay. I think I'm understanding it a bit better now.
The other companies that use the same thing are Amazon uses it, and I think eBay also uses something similar. Obviously, they have tons of money to build algorithms and confidences and ratings. But this is something that they use on the base level, so that if you recall, you go to Amazon, you sort things by best. Then there's some 4 stars and 3 stars that are in with the 5 stars, and it's really because of the confidence in it being highly rated based on the number of ratings that it was given. So what is displayed is not necessarily doesn't necessarily reflect the confidence of that rating.
So does the confidence help missions quests that haven't had that many reviews, or does it work against them? Because it sounds like the more reviews you have at a certain level anyway, the more confident they are with it, it will shoot to the top, whilst it doesn't seem to really assist anyway the lesser rated ones, as in the fewer rated.
Yeah, there's definitely a threshold, right? I mean, with anything that has to do with sort of taking numbers and numbers of plays and trying to average them, and then look at those over a period of time, and then create a confidence score. It gets better the more plays and reviews there are. And definitely to keep in mind, right, what doesn't help is when people don't review. Right?
Yes.
So.
Oh yeah.
There could be plenty of quests that are absolutely amazing and have low plays and very low 4 stars with the number of plays that they've had, but because the reviews aren't there, it's not really helping them. I don't think it does them a disservice. They could definitely find highly rated content. It doesn't hurt quests and their ratings with low plays. It just doesn't. They don't get the full benefit because the numbers sort of, as you mentioned, they sort of equalize and become, more and more confident with the more plays.
I suppose the thing that I couldn't get my head around before was, or that I didn't know actually before, was that there's the time element involved in it as well. So that still confuses me, but I'm sure I'll get it in the morning.
I sat over the shoulder, or I sat behind one of the programmers, and they're giving me this whole spiel about the lower bound, blah, 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 and showing me all of these different algorithms, and this is the one Google uses, and this is why, and this is how they do it. And I was like, wow, this is really amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know what this means.
And that is why I'm not studying to become a programmer.
But then with the addition of tagging, I think what we wanted to do was, well, first of all, it was something that the authors requested, and we agreed with them back in beta, and I think you may know some people that were that participated in alpha and beta, and that was tags was definitely something that
it was in from the very, very beginning. It was. I remember being one of the first requests.
And so, and now I'm okay to say that the reason why I didn't make it in is because we had to wholly and completely rewrite the back end for search and for our database, just so that we can make tags happen. So taking on that task was months of work. And it was finish the Foundry for launch and not have tags, not finish the Foundry was the options there. But yeah, we had to rewrite the database, search had to be rewritten and for catalog, but we finally got tags out there. And really what we wanted to do was exactly what all of the authors wanted, was to enable people to find content that they're looking for easier, and to find content that they had more confidence in, so that using the rating system and then using the information in the histograms of number of plays and how people are rating it, and then on top of that, being able to search by time duration and then tags, it really would be, enable people to find stuff that they were, looking for.
We asked about what the decision to make it so that authors don't tag things. So it's purely, it's a user-generated tagging system, essentially, as opposed to authors pre-tagging their missions. I can see advantages to both. I was wondering if you could explain why you went with just relying on players doing it.
We looked at several systems out there that have sort of tagging or qualifying systems, and none that we looked at, I'm not saying that there aren't any out there, have a system where the creator is the person who tags or qualifies. And then, I was sort of desperate to look, and, I was playing Little Big Planet one night, and and sure enough, that was yet another system that is completely user-generated as far as tagging. And I was like, well, I want to find what the latest stuff is. So I found the latest things, and it didn't have any tags. And at the end, I could tag it. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And then, then I kept poking around. And then I wanted to find examples of things that weren't games that do it, and sent the team off, and let's find out, what other systems are used. In the end, what it came down to, and there was, some articles on this, and then, we did a lot of sort of internal talking and soul searching, to be honest. When you have two different groups with two different investment levels qualifying something, that creates a conflict. And the conflict ends up being lack of trust in the system. And then the system just seems broken. So you tag it blue, the user tags it, the end user tags it green. They see that you tagged it blue, immediately the system's broken, because it isn't what they expected. It was not it isn't what you said it was what they said it was. So then we looked at that, but then the reverse is also true, right? You tag it oranges, they tag it apples. Immediately they're wrong, right? It's oranges. And then you try to get people, please help me tag this oranges so I can prove to people it's oranges.
Yeah, and then
it's not up to the author.
Yeah.
It's up to the end user. So you look at rating systems, right? If we allowed, as producers of things, right? If we just had ourselves qualifying, of course we would just give ourselves 4 stars. No, you can't give us 1 star, it's 4 stars. And then that system would fall apart. So you can't have 2 people with different investment levels qualifying something, because everything falls apart. And really in the end, it just seems like a broken system that nobody has confidence in. And that is counter to what our goal was to having people have more confidence in what they were finding being what they were looking for. So I think the next step, and that is what we rolled out, and there was some controversy, and definitely authors were like, this is the worst system ever because you should just let us tag it. Now, and I don't disagree with that fundamentally. I don't disagree with seeding, right? But immediately it becomes arbitrary, because the first person that doesn't agree with you, then what does your tag mean? And then the system shows that your tag shows up in a search, and the person's, well, this isn't anything like I searched for.
Yeah.
There's another problem, and this is sort of the last one, which is we also allow people to search for things and omit things that have specific tags. So because you tagged something, you're actually not going to show up in the list because you thought your content was something the players didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you actually exclude yourself from searches, and we actually see that now. Somebody actually gets things tagged. But in the end, the power has to be at the end user. They have to be able to say, this is what we think it is, and more often than not, I know everybody is unique, but as more plays and more tags happen, the content moves to generally reflect the things that it's being tagged as. That may be, much to the chagrin of the author. Like, my quest wasn't funny. It was the most serious Super Mario quest ever. It was not funny, but it doesn't matter because it really matters what the end user says. I'll clarify
I suppose
that.
it comes down to, if we were to put it into SEO terms, my Vulcan is not funny. No, your Vulcan is very, very funny.
Yes, and but I would just be clear, just in case there's, somebody catches a single bit of that. It is absolutely important what the author thinks, but it may not be as important to a player.
And I mean, if they really want to, they still can affect it if they want to, if they can get their friends together and they say, well, it meant this and so forth, so forth. That may not be what you intended it to be, but it probably will all work out for the best anyway in the end.
Yeah, and I definitely, I even posted in the tag trading thread, and I think maybe I shouldn't have, but anyways, I think that people getting together and adding these things, that's all part of the community, and if they really believe it, and it should just sort of all come together at the end anyway. So that is what we launched with, and we're definitely, the conversation is not closed. Unfortunately, there is some sort of because of the issues we'd have with editing being off and publishing, going through some hiccups, there haven't been, and then we turned off reviews, there haven't been enough people that can actually go through and tag appropriately. So there's a minor setback with us looking at how people are using tags and how it actually is reflecting and all of those things, but it's something that we're going to continue to do and look and watch very closely, look at and watch very closely. If it turns out that maybe it's manifesting or being used in a way that we didn't think it would, we're going to do our best to react to that. And I don't think leaving it, in the hands of the community, authors and players, does anything damaging to the content. Right? Adding tags is great. People can find stuff, but also it becomes sort of normative. Right? People are like, well, I'm going to search for has any tags because I'm just really looking for anything, or I'm going to search for things that have no tags because I'm interested in no tag stuff. So I think in the end it sort of comes up. I don't think it does any way that the tagging system sort of morphs doesn't do harm to the content. But what it does allow us to do going forward is sort of, again, with that sort of that theme of confidence, is we would love to get a recommendation system in for the Foundry. I'm looping it back into future plans. And then...
would that ever be part of, I know you're involved with Gateway, would that ever be involved with Gateway?
Wait, what being involved with Gateway?
The reviews and being able to see things from outside and recommend Foundry missions, etc.
Yeah,
Foundry in general, I think probably is Foundry in general, will that be linked with Gateway in any way?
I know that it is not an impossibility, and it is something that is not off the table, but it is not something that is, I haven't even seen on the authors' lists of things that they want, like top 20s. And oddly enough, though, I went to one of the Foundry team members and I said, hey, what's it going to take you to get the Foundry editor on Gateway? So people can edit from anywhere, like on their phones or their iPads, or whatever.
Or, offline.
That's dangerous.
Yes, I know.
You have to have...
We'll never get that.
Constant trust with the server, and having things offline and uploading to servers is no good.
Yeah, which is why import, etc. was always risky.
To my surprise, he said, oh my gosh, I can do that. That's totally easy. Just give me 11 months. And then he said, your definition of easy and mine are obviously different. And so I don't think that's somewhere that we're going to go. But
I suppose it was more just being able to sort of see what missions are out there and maybe commenting back on reviews or something like that. Some sort of more integration with, so it's not just purely in-game that you have to be. That there can be, I know that you have the forums and everything, which is good in one way, but then that's still...
Well, author blogs actually came up as one of the things, if you recall, from Alpha and Beta. We looked at that, and I think that we could probably come up with some partnership, and I am interested in, I know we're not talking about Gateway, but I'm interested in a more of a social element in Gateway to see if there could be a social space in there. I'm not talking about Facebook or anything, but resurrecting the idea of an author blog or a place where people can get news about the latest stuff in Foundry, I think would be pretty cool.
That was an interview. That was the first part of an interview, and any comments from the audience, please give them in. If you have any questions for us, or you want any discussions, you want any topics rather you want us to discuss regarding the interview or anything, just let us know in the chat, and we'll pick up on them and talk about them. If anyone wants to send us in any reactions or anything, you can send that in to us, and etc. Yeah, you probably know the format by now. Well, hopefully, maybe you will. Anyway, we're going to... I know a couple of people here have some topics regarding that, the first half of the interview. So, should we start with Kirkvat?
All right, so I'll start with the positive elements of my positive reactions. I think out of this interview, the most positive thing that I got was the focus on usability and polish going forward. because I think that's great, and I think that would be really, really great if it also included polish and usability and improving the STO Foundry, because there are so many different ways in which we've seen additions to the Foundry have broken other parts of the Foundry, or things along those lines where the tool became less and less usable. And so I love that. I mean, I think that's really the best thing that they could do, is just to say, okay, no, let's not focus on some big new feature that might break what we've already made. Let's just focus on making the tool more usable. So I like that, and I really hope something resembling that can make its way back to STO.
I agree.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I mean, he's saying a lot of great stuff about Neverwinter. I mean, I know it was a Neverwinter-ific interview. I would have liked to hear more about STO.
And we will in the second.
Good thing. Yes, exactly. In Primetime UGC, we'll have the second half, which does focus a bit more on STO. But yes, I agree. Really, the Foundry is at a point where it's more than just new features. In fact, it has been for a while. It's been at that point where it comes to the point where you don't need new features. You need polish and bug fixes and time spent making things work better. If new features make things work better, but also add polish and add, perhaps it's a new feature that replaces an old feature, okay, that's understandable. But I would still say that bug fixes come before almost everything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's even true with the new features, because you talked about the fantastic and the fascinating 3D editor. I messed around with that thing for 2 hours today, and I think I found every idiosyncrasy that frustrated me, and
yes,
it was so weird. It was like,
yeah, it is.
First, I can't use FreeCam anymore. Maybe the command has changed, but FreeCam's no longer there. But so I'm going around, and my quest is to do something easy. I'm going to build a plane in the sky, just a platform.
Yeah.
And so first I looked for the floors, and I couldn't really find very many floors, but I found one floor that was square. And what I discovered, which I really, really liked, was that in Neverwinter, the coordinates of the dimensions match the coordinates. So it was really easy just to line up those squares and build a platform. But then when I started to try to use the 3D editor, it was like I would lose the ability to select it. Or if I was standing on one of the floors and I selected it, I would fall through the floor. Or when I did push the button to kind of render it all, my character would fall to the bottom of the map, and I'd have to go back into the Foundry and then back into the 3D editor. It was just it was a lot of headaches that I think could be streamlined. Now, I really hope that if Star Trek Online sees that 3D nudger, that it'll have an easier time, because it doesn't have all the issues with camera. That's the biggest issue with what it seems to be in Neverwinter at the moment, is that the when you're selecting something, it has to be with the camera, like it has to be in the center of the screen. That's the weirdest thing to me. And well, also, you were talking about FreeCam. You do have the ability to fly, but it literally is as if your character is flying. Therefore, you still have collision. So you can't fly through an object or something. If you wanted to build a floor and you want to build a room and everything like that, you can't actually. If you had rendered it out and they were solid objects, you in fly mode, you wouldn't be able to fly through those walls, because essentially your character is still there. It's just invisible, or there's a different collision box, but it's still. It's so weird. So I was in there a couple of days ago doing stuff for Primetime, and I was trying to get stuff onto a map, but I found us blocked by invisible walls. Now with FreeCam, we don't have that issue at all, but in Neverwinter, unfortunately, you do, because you still have this collision. Therefore, you can't go through invisible walls. It makes no sense to lock the camera at exactly the point where you need to rotate the camera in order to manipulate the objects and to put them where you want to put them. So I think it's probably a limitation of the game. It can probably be got around at some point. I hope it can be anyway. But
but I'm sure it would be, if it were introduced into STO, I'm pretty confident we wouldn't have that issue, simply because we can move a mouse cursor around in normal view.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's something that should be improved.
Yeah. And so far, that's the only thing I've really gotten into it with Neverwinter. So I'm sure there's a lot of other issues with new features. But basically, polish, please. I mean, the tool is still, after 2 years, it's not very intuitive. It takes people like me to make tutorials. And even after I've spent 2 years making tutorials, I get confused in Neverwinter's Foundry. So that's probably not a sign that the usability is improving that much.
No.
Yeah, and you have so many more choices in there, too. It's overwhelming when you first go in.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys think about the idea of not having an auto republish, at least for a few days?
Well, the auto republish is interesting. The idea of being able to then to edit it to, like, because with us we've had issues in that we've not been able to like, when we republish a mission, suddenly we find, oh god, it's broken, everything is dead. But sometimes the mission will still go out, and then we'll get the bad reviews and everything like that. So I like the idea of having this buffer period before we then republish. I can't remember if it was in this part of the interview or the next part. He talked about the staged republish. Was that this first part?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. He talks about it being you get like you republish the most recent things or the highest rated stuff. So like you publish the spotlights first and then slowly go down and down and down. I think that's a good idea. Just because it lowers, it means I assume it would mean that stuff gets put out faster because it's less stuff is being republished at once. Therefore, it load on the servers better. They're probably less likely to have any errors made. So again, that's good. Yeah, all in all, I think it's probably a good idea, and I would like to see it in STO as well.
Yeah.
Less breakages. I would be interested in knowing whether with some of our breakages we've had in STO, and also in Neverwinter now, because the editor was down itself for a while. I'm always curious what happened. What is the issue that prevents us from going into the editor? I mean, I know there were a couple with things that were, once we had the dialogue, like pop-up dialogues and things, just vanished or something if we went in and changed stuff. But I wonder if that's happened every single time, like there's always an issue with the editor itself, or whether we could go in, have a look around at our quests in preview, but not be able to publish, if that makes sense.
I think the issue there is from Season 4, when all of us tried to really start to fix our missions, and they ended up having to revert it to an earlier state. So anyone who changed their missions post-Season 4 lost the changes that they had made to try to fix them. So I think when they don't let us into the editor, I think that's a case in which they don't want us to change our missions in case they have to revert to an earlier save.
I still don't necessarily think that's the best. I don't think that's really an argument against it, though, because you can still have... I mean, the previous save as such will still be there. Like, they keep backups. I think it was Zero that told us last year. There are backups for like the past 2 or 3 updates or something like that. It's not exactly easy to access them, like one individually, but if they need to revert, then they can just revert back to previous state. And I think now they make backups of the Foundry each time, like the Foundry database each time before they go to the major updates. At least I seem to remember someone saying that. Whether it's true or not, it's a different matter. I know a couple of people in the chat were a bit confused by the rating system or how it works. I know that I certainly was at one point. So I actually have a friend here who was just baking some bread, who's doing a maths degree, and I'll just put maths and statistics. Hold on, I'm going to give him an earbud. This is weird stuff here going on. So I've literally just brought it up on Wikipedia to make sure he knows what he's talking about. And yeah, so Andrew, some people may know him. So explain what the lower bound of Wilson is.
Okay, well, basically, basically, when you have your kind of normal probabilities, kind of your average probabilities and your normal probabilities, you have this thing called standard deviation, which is the individual kind of, obviously, deviation between each kind of probability and percentage. This is really difficult to know without being in a lecture. But the normal standard deviation is square root of 1 over number of trials times the probability times the 1 minus probability. Now that's just the equation for the kind of standard deviation. What the Wilson score is when you kind of add an error rating onto the standard deviation.
So essentially, there's a time period put into it because we heard a bit about confidence being involved with it. So where does that come into the sort of the maths of it as such?
So that's the part I don't understand. That doesn't actually, the time period doesn't actually come into the equation, but I'm guessing they've maybe modded not modded, but made a change. Made a change to the equation so it more fits their rating system. I mean, with the Wilson score is when they add the error percentage onto the error percentage of this deviation. So it's more accurate. You can get better ratings on the kind of Foundry things.
on the reviews, okay.
I'm just a statistician here.
So essentially, what it is then is you have a number of it's like a normal average.
Yeah, it's like a normal average, but on the average you include the probabilities again to include an error percentage, so that it's the average plus or minus however much, if that makes sense.
I think it makes a bit more sense anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I can't explain it in layman's terms because it's quite difficult. I don't really understand it. I do understand it in layman's terms, but I can't explain it in layman's terms. If that makes sense. But,
I think it does, yes.
I'm not certain where the time confidence part comes in. So I'm guessing that's a part that Neverwinter themselves has made a change to the equation. So it's probably going to be better than the actual Wilson score itself.
Okay. Well, that's cool.
So it's going to be more accurate than you would normally get.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think that's slightly more. We're slightly more informed now. Anyway, you never know.
It's interesting, but it's also, I'll just go back to observation of what happened to the lists when that type of system was put into place. I mean, the best and most famous Foundry authors disappeared from the list, and a lot of the people that are now on the list are not necessarily the best Foundry authors. So I will call it magic. It's still magic to me, and it's magic that doesn't make sense. Plus, I'm bad with math.
Aren't we all a little bit?
Says the person who had a forum post involving math.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and that's one of the things I want to talk about. Okay, so he said flat out that integrity must be maintained. The reputation of the Foundry is at stake, and he doesn't want players shooting fish in a barrel, at least as far as dropping ogres down a hole. 73% of our lists in STO are full of that type of thing. So it's clear that he's talking about Neverwinter. I mean, this is the part of the interview where I'm amazed that he's so involved into Neverwinter and so almost, what would you guys say? I don't want to use oblivious. I'm sorry to the guy for using that word, but it is. It's oblivious to.
It's not his fault.
No, it's not his fault.
No, I think the issue. Well, I think it comes into the next part of the interview, but it seems like stuff just hasn't got through to him to know. Like he just doesn't. He did not know about the issues that SEO had. Well, he knows about some of them, but not the most recent bugs and things like that. So it's. I see where you're coming from. But yeah,
I mean, there's no effort. I mean, there's no effort.
His primary job is Neverwinter currently.
Right,
that is his primary.
And I guess that's what comes through this interview so much, because there really is no attempt on the STO side to preserve the integrity of Foundry authors, or to really to say that the reputation of the Foundry depends on the type of missions that are dominating the lists. Nobody's in charge of that with our Foundry.
Yeah.
It just seems like at Neverwinter, Foundry is everything. And in
STO,
it is. It's not much.
Well, we have, yeah.
So the priority is night and
You're
day.
right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. As far as Neverwinter is concerned, Neverwinter would not be continuing, or would not still be here if it were not for Neverwinter. The Foundry is everything, literally everything.
Right. Built around the Foundry.
Yeah, I mean they stopped they completely stopped production and did a complete U-turn and then decided, oh, we have this Foundry thing now, let's do that. That was when Perfect World took over, I think, wasn't it? Cast probably remembers better than me. He's gone. Oh well, always muted, something like that.
It's just I can't help but feel, it's because I'm an STO author. I don't know how a Neverwinter author will respond to this interview, but it's just at where we are now, 3 months out of Legacy of Romulus, where stuff's still not fixed, and every season tends to break the Foundry. Sometimes it breaks it worse as seasons go on, and to be in that type of position and to hear the person who is in charge of the Foundry, essentially, to be so wrapped up in Neverwinter and so almost unaware of how it even affects the other part of the game or what's going on in the other part of the game it's sad. It makes me sad as a STO author.
Mm-hmm. Azurian just raised a point in chat about he says makes me think there should be 2 separate Foundry teams than having a core team.
Right. I mean, you remember what Dan Stahl said, right?
Yeah,
when
I
Dan
agree that there should be. Sorry, let me just very quickly make a point. There should be 3 teams as such. Well, there should be a core team who continues to work on features, which is currently the majority of what the Neverwinter team do. They work on features. That whenever they make a feature, it is checked in for STO. That's a question for the next part, but I suppose we'll talk about it a little bit now anyway. But what there should be is definitely dedicated people on Neverwinter and dedicated people on STO, making sure that everything works, and then integrating whatever the core team make into those games. Okay, the core team don't necessarily have to be limited to just working on features for both games. They could focus more on Neverwinter, but we need a bigger team on STO. We need 1, 2, 3, however many devs on STO, making sure that the Foundry works. I mean, even just give us a couple of people from the core team currently to go and look and say, okay, this doesn't work, we'll fix this. This doesn't work, we'll fix this. Take time and do it. You never know. We may get that with Season 8. We haven't heard anything really about what's coming with Season 8 as regards to Foundry. We have seen some signs that things are getting better, and we have to assume that there is someone actually working on the Foundry because of things like the costume unlock thing, like the historical bug of C stores. Like you had to own a certain costume before you could unlock it in the Foundry and that sort of thing, and same as Species. But now you don't. It seems to be open to absolutely everyone. All costumes that are available in the Foundry are available to everyone. There's no longer that C-store pay gate as such. Even though it was a bug, it still existed for a long time. So someone is obviously working on the Foundry in STO. We just don't know what they're doing.
But we can probably agree that there is a core team, but the core doesn't have shared priorities necessarily that are equal across games.
No.
What do you mean currently?
Well, I mean, the idea behind a core team is a small team that supports the thing for all the games, right? So the Foundry for Neverwinter, the Foundry for Star Trek Online, but it seems pretty obvious that core team is focused on one specific game, despite the fact that it is a core team.
In the second part of the interview, he goes on to talk about what they actually do. Whenever they create a new feature, they make sure that it is compatible with Star Trek Online's code.
But that's maintenance. I mean, that's maintenance and bug fixes.
Well, yes and no. They are developing for the Foundry, and that means they're developing for both Neverwinter and then STO. It's just we have no one on STO to implement it. Yeah. So, yes, as far as we know, everything that's in Neverwinter should, in theory, be compatible with Star Trek Online, because we know that the master patch server and all that stuff is shared within the Foundry itself. So when they update code, they update it, in theory, for the whole of the Foundry.
Yes, like we said that they bounce it off STO before they implement it in Neverwinter.
Yep. So I think it's safe enough to say, yes, they are creating a whenever they make something new for Neverwinter, it means that it should work in Star Trek Online. The problem is we don't have anyone, like I said, to implement it, and that's really where the issue comes. The majority of the team in the core Foundry team, I don't think would actually be necessarily working on. I don't know. It depends. If it's something that Neverwinter the game has done that's changed in the code and affect Neverwinter the Foundry, if that makes any sense, I don't think all the team would necessarily be working on that, like all the core Foundry team. I think what they would be doing is fixing errors that came with the code that they created. So they'd be fixing the features that they created, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Dan Stahl here when he said earlier that having a core team try to support all games is not working.
Yeah.
And Dan is right. I hope Dan still feels that way, and I hope Dan is willing to do something about the way that he feels.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's not ultimately up to Dan, but I wish it was.
Higher?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, remember who's the EP of Neverwinter at the moment. Yeah. But, I mean, that's probably not it. But as it will be controlled largely by Perfect World, because currently Neverwinter is what they really went and invested in. And so, you never...
So it's the new shiny, and we're the old.
We have to remember that we've been told before that the Foundry makes good money for Cryptic and for Perfect World. Very good money. Of course, I'm pretty sure Neverwinter's probably blowing that out of proportion, but that's just because of the type of game it is and the type of genre, the type of people it appeals to, the type of player base. Yeah. If Perfect came to shove, I would say that Perfect World is probably one of the reasons why
there's a disconnect.
I probably think that has something to do with it. I mean, it may not be Perfect World necessarily saying, look, take them, put them on Neverwinter, boom. But I'm sure there is some pressure to make sure that everything works. Of course, now though, they've done Module 1 in Neverwinter, and Rob is saying he wants to really focus on fixing things now. Like you said before, I think that's a really good thing. That probably opens the door for them, because they won't be pushing and pushing and pushing to create new features to put into Neverwinter and that sort of thing. Perhaps now they actually have a decent chance of going back and fixing STO, and Dan might then be able to get the time to get them onto STO and fixing it. It's things we'd have to ask him, I think.
Yeah.
I'm afraid Rob just isn't the right person to ask about that.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yeah, I'll move on, though. One thing that really confuses me is this idea that I think he's being genuine when he says he sympathizes with the authors who can't get plays because of the way the listings work. Mm-hmm. I looked at Neverwinter's listings today, and what I was really surprised to find is they're far more restrictive than Star Trek Online's listings. I mean, there's even a category that they don't have that we have, which is hot. And in their categories, it really is. If you're in the top 50, you get plays. If you're not in the top 50, sorry. You can go beg on the forums, or you can make a YouTube trailer, or you can do whatever you have to do, but sorry. And so I don't understand how those two things can be kind of in the same ballpark as far as having sympathy with the authors who can't get plays and yet not giving players the ability to scroll to a page 2. You know, say, here's the top 50. Well, here's the top 50 of 100. Well, here's the top 150. Like, why are they, on the one hand, touting the Foundry as this great tool and Foundry authors as amazing players who can create amazing things, yet at the same time not giving players the ability to access those things? I mean, it really has gotten to a point where somebody's got to do a custom search if you're not on the top 50.
I think the addition of the tags, etc., will help with that.
Yeah,
to
I
some
hope so.
extent, anyway.
Well, at least before we used to be able to scroll down the list.
Yeah.
When you'd see the star ratings decline as you get down toward the bottom, at least you could go through it.
I'm wondering if that's a bug currently or not.
Well, see, I thought that was intentional on the Stowe side because of the explosion of exploits, right? If you look on the KDF side, there's only 11 missions listed as new. I guess that's because there's only 11 new KDF missions. Whereas on the STO side, it's 146. But on Neverwinter, it's new as top 50. There's no way to go beyond the 50 or the 60 that are listed.
I'm wondering if that's a bug. I'm not entirely sure. I guess we'll have to find that out for next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I know there is one thing about the listings and everything. It was the same with the mail bug and stuff. Like when you really open up a search in SEO or in Neverwinter, you get horrendous lag when you scroll, when you have like loads of things featuring down. I think it's something to do with database stuff somewhere. But yeah, that may be one of the reasons why they're doing it. But yeah, it's not the best idea to help authors get plays.
Yeah. So yeah, those were my reactions. I don't have anything else.
Wow.
How do you feel about taking a break?
Yeah, we could take a 2-minute break or something.
Well, I have the ad break.
Cool. Let's go to ads then. And if anyone has anyone wants to say anything, just let us know. Type in your comments. We'll see you after the show. Break, rather. Words brain.
You may not recognize me, but I hold the record for the longest consecutive win streak in dueling history. Don't feel bad. It happens all the time. When I'm eating at my favorite restaurant or charging goods and services all over the Alpha Quadrant and beyond. Let's face it, there are some malevolent species out there and they just don't trust me. But they do trust this, the Andorian Express card, known throughout the quadrant as a symbol of prestige. It's not just a charge card, it's a status symbol that says I'm somebody, and it's accepted on planets galaxy-wide. You may not be from my homeworld, but nothing says you've arrived like Andorian Express. Even when my opponents fail to realize what they're in for, it's easy to remind them. I'm Shrek, and I've taken the lives of 16 men, a career that screams excellence, just like my card, Andorian Express. Don't Ushan without it. In the Federation justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups. The Starfleet officers who investigate violations, and the silicon-based life forms who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories. So I told my wife, look, if you need a new food replicator, I suggest you replicate a new one. It ain't like I'm on salary. Hey, you're preaching to the choir, my friend. My third ex-wife used to pull that, and I'd give her the "we do this to better ourselves and the rest of humanity" speech. And she bought that line? Nah, that's why she's an ex. She left me for some upwardly mobile Orion. She's a slave these days, but I hear she can replicate a hell of a meatloaf. Benny, look! Geez, Ray, you want to slow down? I downed a swimming pool's worth of scotch since I won that high school track medal. Now what do we have here? Looks like your Vic is one of them Ferengi. Another milestone in deductive reasoning. DNA scans identify him as a guy named Brand, a solicitor. It's gonna be tougher trying to find someone who didn't want to kill this guy. Anyway, there are no apparent wounds of any kind. The medical examiner is en route. We'll know more after he examines the feller. Well, until the ME gets here, I want a portable stasis field set up around the body. I want special attention paid to the Vic's hands for particle traces. I also want his lobes scanned for possible foreign DNA. His ears, Detective? He's Ferengi. I guarantee he's had Umox in the last 24 hours. Call it a hunch. Why, you got something against the man dying with a smile on his face? Looks like your Vic, Mr. Bran, died of a cerebral hemorrhage. So the lawyer died of natural causes? It's a lucky day. Case closed. You're not that lucky, and neither was he. He's implanted with a micro-explosive device. He never knew what hit him. Well, let's find someone who did. What else do we know? There were traces of tricobalt and serenite diboromide. The perp's original, I'll give him that. Serenite diboromide is a gelatinous chemical agent commonly used to remove scarring on starship hulls, resulting from asteroid strikes. It's rubbed over the scarring and then exposed to mild concentrations of alpha waves. The reaction removes the scarring. To my knowledge, it's never been used in this way. What way is that? As a detonation catalyst. The tricobalt is encapsulated in a very thin metallic membrane, separating it from the serenite. Introduce some alpha waves, and bang! So basically anyone with a device emitting alpha waves could have set off the explosive implant. That's about right, but alpha waves dissipate quickly. The perpetrator would have to be fairly close. So it could have been anyone in that neighborhood. Where do we even begin to look? Step 1, find the motive. Who is Mr. Bran and who'd benefit from his demise? Okay, so as usual, I'm starting my day with Bran. According to a witness, Bran returned to his office at about 16:30 after some slip and fall litigation. It was a Mr. Faz Banaka who also had an office on that floor. Banaka says Bran locked up the office around 16:40 and went out into the street. And then he dropped? That's the funny thing, Captain. Witnesses say he exited the building between 17:07 and 17:12. There's only one flight of stairs between his office door and the street. Well, maybe that Banaka guy is mistaken. Security devices in the hallway back him up.
So where the hell did he go for almost half an hour? Why can't we just catch an easy one now and then? Get out there and take a few scans. Maybe there'll be some kind of transporter trace or residual alpha waves. While you're at it, round up all the surveillance records for the time in question. I want to know this guy's entire history. I mean beyond the advertisements.
Sir?
You mean to tell me you guys didn't recognize your Vic? For compensation, he's your man?
He's that guy? Still doesn't ring a bell.
Are you sure you guys are detectives?
Yes, sir, that's the rumor. Doctor, I would speak with you regarding some discomfort I'm having. Sure, Sulek. What seems to be the trouble? In private, if you don't mind, Doctor. Don't worry about Nurse Borden, son. She's busy with her duties. That patient on the bed there went into cardiac arrest a few minutes ago. Now what's troubling you? Come on, out with it. I'm a doctor. There's nothing I haven't heard. Well, I've been on this mission out in deep space for 6 years now. It was about a year before I got the assignment
Say
that
no
I...
more,
son. I've got just the thing. Medical science has advanced to the point where we've almost licked the common cold. Blood fever? No problem. Not anymore. Now there's Vulcaden, Ponfar Reliever. It magically erases all symptoms associated with the Vulcan mating ritual. I have tried medications before, Doctor, but you've never tried Vulcaden. Just take 2 of these and you'll be right as rain. You are right, Doctor. I feel 98.35% better already. Ask your doctor about Vulcaden. There's no need to fear Ponfar. Side effects may include weight gain, weight loss, hair loss, ear pain, stomach upset, diarrhea, incontinence, flatulism, irritation of the inner eyelid, round ears, and priapism.
Now we're back. Hello, people. We're back. Hope you enjoyed our little break with all our fun commercials. Yay! Because we do that stuff. Anyway, I think we've probably run out of... Unless anyone has anything else to add to the debate about this first part of the interview. I'm sure we'll have more to talk about on our next episode after Primetime UGC has aired with the second part. But if everyone's in agreement, shall we move on to our next section?
Sure.
Cool. So this is a section that was dreamt up last week, and it's a little bit... Well, not last week, but last episode, rather. And it's basically where we go through every single series of Star Trek, beginning with the original series and each season, and choose our best and our worst episodes from that season of that series. So last week we did season 1 of the original series, and now we're on to season 2. So, who would like to go first with their worst?
I mean, I got mine right on the tip of my tongue, and it's Cat's Paw. The one with the black cat.
Cat's Paw?
Not the Gary 7 one, the other one.
I don't remember much about Cat's Paw at all.
Yeah, that's why.
And there's probably a reason.
Yeah, it's just a bad episode. It's just that they hold the crew captive, and there isn't really anything that important going on.
Isn't that weird that the first episodes of the first season were like some of the best Star Trek ever, but then the second season premieres with Cat's Paw, and the third season premieres with Spock's brain.
Well, actually, according to the list I have, it's Amok Time was the premiere episode.
Oh, was it? Right.
Yeah.
Cat's Paw is like the 7th episode in.
But that doesn't mean that's when they Well, okay, apparently
it does. You can see the original air date.
Yeah,
you can see the...
I
I see.
Mm-hmm. Although, interestingly
it was the first
enough,
episode produced.
It was
though.
produced, yes. It was number 30 as opposed to Amok Time, which was production code 34. So, started off with the worst.
Anyway, that's my worst.
Okay.
I'm going with the Immunity Syndrome.
But the space amoeba is so pretty.
Cosmozoan need to die.
That is such a horrible attitude.
Giant germ.
I'm sorry, I'm part of the new Starfleet. We come in peace, shoot to kill.
Hey, I like my Gekli, okay? My Gekli follows me around everywhere. He's cute. He wiggles.
I think I'm going to go with Omega Glory for worst. That's the one with the Yangs and the communists and the Yankees and the American flag and all that. It just based on the ideological sentiment of the episode, I'm going to rank that as worst.
And not the
people.
Infinite probability of a parallel constitution showing up on a parallel world.
There was a lot of that. There was that gangster book. There was Constitution. Then we had to support the Vietnam War with a private little war. This season was a mixed bag.
I don't actually know what my worst one is because a lot of I would probably say I've probably watched the good ones of this season, and then have completely blanked the worst ones from my memory entirely, because some of these I just don't remember even being a thing. So I can't really talk about my worst, but I can start off the best.
All right.
I would probably go for. It's tied between Trouble with Tribbles, which is just fantastic, and I'm tempted to say no. That's fine. I'll just go for Trouble with Tribbles. Although honorable mention would be Amok Time and Mirror Mirror, because I loved Mirror Mirror, just for what it created later on. I think Mirror Mirror was an interesting episode.
And I'm going to choose Mirror Mirror as my primary, with special mention being Journey to Babel and Piece of the Action.
Which one was Piece of the Action?
It's
The
the gangsters of the 20s.
Bella Oxmix.
Oh, the one where they had a book and then they built.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay,
the
gotcha.
SS Horizon contaminated them.
That was a weird episode.
I think I'm going to say... See, personally, the one episode that's probably my favorite of this list is Who Mourns for Adonis, because I like it, but I don't really consider it the best, objectively. So, objectively, the best, I'll say, is The Doomsday Machine.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good one.
Yeah, I have it's a tough one. This is a tough one. And if I had to, I think there's like a three-way tie. I mean, Amok Time's a classic. You have to go with that. And then there's Doomsday Machine with Decker. That was awesome. Sheesh. Hey, what else? The Changeling was even there. There were a lot of great ones. But I guess if I had to say, I'd have to say A Piece of the Action. Out of all of them.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give a special musical shout-out to Amok Time.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing, isn't it? That every
Because
Star Trek fan
that's
just
probably,
knows that.
other than the main theme, that's probably the most iconic piece of music that has come out of the Star Trek series.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I knew that music before I'd even watched the episode. That's how much it's permeated through Star Trek in general. Like I had heard that and knew it before I'd even watched the episode. It's like, oh, that's where it comes from.
Well, it's been parodied so many times.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay, then. So that's Season 2 done. Then we're on to Season 3 next time. And then
joy.
That's it for... There's some good episodes in there. But we'll get onto that next time.
So right now we'll
go into a
cast after I play his little intro.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And here we go. And we're back.
And welcome to Cosmodian's Casting Couch. Over to Cosmodian.
All right, so this week they're having a special sale in the Lobby store, and the chosen item that got the massive discount on it was the Photonic Tactical Officer. So I figured this week, let's cast all of the Photonic Officers. Now, obviously everybody knows that Bob Picardo was the EMH Mark I. But we additionally have the Photonic Tactical Officer itself. There's a Klingon version, and also there's the EMH Mark good Lord, I don't even know what mark he is.
Is it 9?
I don't know, because we ended up with what's his face, that
Zachary Quinto.
comedian guy.
Oh, Andy Dick.
Yeah,
Oh,
Andy
right.
Dick. There we
Yes.
go. As the MA Mark II, and I think he was a downgrade personally, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the future now.
Okay.
So for my first pick, I'll go with the Klingon version first, and I'm going to go actually with a gentleman named Tony Todd.
Oh, yeah.
Some of you will know him. I believe he has actually been in Star Trek, but most people would probably know him from his role in The Candyman.
He was Kern.
He's been in everything.
What was he, Kern?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty sure he was.
Also Jake Sisko.
Was he future Jake Sisko too?
Yes, he was.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
He was also a Herodian in Voyager.
Yeah,
Was
but
he?
that's Voyager. Who watched that?
I love Voyager. I wait for
Yeah,
the
Tony
backlash.
Todd's been around Star Trek a lot.
Well,
Oh,
then
yeah.
that's my Star Trek character actor fail for the evening.
He was even in Star Trek Elite Force 2, the video game.
Yeah,
He was
but
a
who
voice
played
in
that?
Well, that's true. It wasn't.
Oh, I hate that
game.
game. That game. Oh,
It wasn't as good as the first one, but it wasn't
didn't even-
too bad.
Oh,
Did we lose someone?
no, everybody just went down a tunnel.
Okay. That was odd. I can hear myself coming back in the background, so someone's got speakers on.
That was weird.
Did we lose Kirkvat?
hello.
Oh, there he is. He's back. Oh,
Sorry.
well.
No, but we were listening to the stream feed.
Sorry, I had
Yeah.
to pull it up to see the pics, and it was muted. My
And-
fault.
Well, for the Federation version of the EMH, I'm going to go with the currently mostly bald, but the particular variant from Ender's Game, Harrison Ford. I think he is grizzled
Oh,
enough
yeah.
to appear
that would
as
work.
the current one.
That would
You
work.
know who I was going to say? He's been in Star Trek before. Is John Savage, who played Captain Ransom in Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, something about the eyes.
They're crazy eyes.
It's like John Savage.
I think I'm going to go with cast on both cast picks, because ever since he put his picks forth, I can't see these characters as anything other than the old Jake Sisko and Harrison Ford.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I have to agree.
The guy in the suit,
Could be anybody.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, no.
that's
I have
the easy
perfect
one.
pick.
the suit.
And
Mm.
and just because of the design of the Mako armor and stuff, that particular one I went with the new Tron and thought, yeah, let's go with Clue and make him Jeff Bridges.
That's not bad.
Right.
The photonic officer abides.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges could
Photonic
work.
Dude.
I was going to go with Warwick Davis. Because, he can be completely CGI, and just with that voice, I think it would work perfectly. Don't ask me why. But Jeff Bridges would be hilarious just for the fact. To be honest, do we ever hear the Fed Tactical Officer talk? Would they ever talk? Or are they like the Stig?
I'm
Okay.
afraid that if they ever actually let them talk, it would be those voices that you can dig out of the hog files. You remember way
I
back in
found one
Alpha?
the other day. Yes, I found a copy of that. It was
And
hilarious.
they are truly evil.
They're wonderful.
We are blessed by the fact that they don't talk.
Except for now in Legacy of Romulus. Ooh, Azurian, yes. Vin Diesel, Van Diesel, he would go well, but again,
Now,
I don't
Vin
I
Diesel
don't think
is a
we'd
tree
hear him
right
talk.
now.
He's what?
He's a tree right now, so no.
What?
He's doing the voice of Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Is he?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
So better. The screen will be better for not seeing Vin Diesel, but unfortunately, we will still have to hear him.
Yeah, I like Vin Diesel. In Riddick, anyway. Chronicles of Riddick, he's good.
Well, you and Katie Sackhoff can have wonderful dream time together.
Wow. Okay, then. Is that everything?
I think that's a
Did
show.
everybody say their picks?
I think so.
Yep.
Cool. Oh,
Then
and just
that's
as
apparently a show.
Bazag arrives. Oh, that's such a show. Just as our resident Australian arrives.
Hooray! I wasn't the latest.
Oh, well then, guys. I think we'll just leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure you come and check out Primetime UGC, which will air a week on Tuesday. Is that correct? Which is going to be the 10th of September. You can catch that, which will have the second part of the interview on it, as well as tutorial, reviews, news, comedy sketches, and the whole range of everything. If you want to get in contact with us, you can send us an email at mailbag@primetimeugc.com. It will be in the description of the final video, as well as in the forum posts and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Is there anything else anyone wants to shout out to?
Next week we'll announce the winners of the contest.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes. Are we doing that on Primetime, yes?
Are we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Oh, well,
Okay.
no, you know what? Maybe we
we'll do it live.
Drive time.
Okay.
We could have the winner on, maybe.
So the announcement of the winners of our contest will be on the 22nd of September. So, yeah. Keep an eye out for that, guys. And I think that's probably everything done then.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining. Check out Cerberusfilms on YouTube. And, last thing we always forget, Twitter. You can reach me at Cerberusfilms on Twitter. Everyone else, give your handles.
At Kirkbat.
At PF Dennis.
At Casmodian, and also at Starbase UGC.
And at DrivetimeUGC or at Primetime_UGC. Yes, things like that and stuff. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. This has been episode 5 of Drivetime UGC. Bye-bye.
Good night.
This is a
Deal with it.
emergency broadcast. Have developed this system to keep you informed in the event of an emergency. If this had been an actual emergency, the attention signal you just heard would have been followed by official news, information, or instructions. This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system.